Today we are here with Justin Stewart. He is a dairy farmer here in Arizona. We're going to be talking about his personal story, how he takes care of his cows here on the farm. As I've learned, there are about 3,200 of them, and we're just going to learn a little bit more about the nutrition and the quality of dairy just to make sure that we have a great product. So Justin, if you want to start out, just give us a little bit of an introduction of yourself, and I'm more so curious on your own personal story and how you got into the dairy business.
Yeah, Justin Stewart, Arizona Dairy, like you said already. Well, I got into dairying like the good old-fashioned way, just like everybody else. I married into it.
That's how it goes?
No, that's not typically how it does, but I did. And I married my wife about 29 years ago, and her parents had started a dairy in 1973 called Arizona Dairy Company. And once I became a part of the family, one thing led to another, and I started working at the dairy, and here I am today.
Nice, and how long has that been?
Let's see, I was an air traffic controller for a little while prior to that, and so it's been since probably the last 15 years.
Nice, nice. And I heard you were in the Navy before as well?
Yep.
Nice. Well, thank you for your service.
Of course.
Must be said.
Yes.
So I guess overall in your current day-to-day, like what is the most rewarding part of your job?
You know, one of the most rewarding things to me is actually being able to make milk and make food, and nutritious, high-quality food for everyone that loves milk, cheese, and butter. You know, where would we be without butter in our life?
Can't forget ice cream.
And ice cream, of course, yes.
Nice, well said. So I guess with this all, there's a lot of misconceptions with dairy and nutrition, you know, especially in the last few years. People are very pro or very con. So I guess right off the bat, any particular misconceptions you wanted to address in regards to dairy?
Chocolate milk does not come from brown cows.
Dang it, I should have known that.
Maybe one larger misconception is that large dairy farms across the country, they maybe abuse their cows, but they don't. That's a huge misconception. All dairy farms that I'm familiar with take really good care of their cows, every single one of them, down to every single udder, and every single cow is really, really important to them.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I saw that as we were touring the farm too, that there's a lot of different, I know you hate the word sustainable, but sustainable practices like reusing water. I know you mentioned something about methane. What exactly are you doing with this farm just to make sure that, you know, we're taking care of our environment, which I know is a big buzzword these days too?
Yeah, well, I'd like to pass this farm down to the next generation and the generations after that. I myself, now that I'm part of the family, in the last 30 years, we're generation 4. And so my wife's sons are working on the dairy, that's generation 5. Their kids, they had kids, and so that's generation 6 currently working on the dairy. And we just had generation 7 born. So I have a responsibility to make sure that we are sustainable to get it passed down to them. And so some of the things that we do is obviously take precious care of our water. Here in Arizona, water is very important,
Very dry.
right? Very dry. And so it takes a little bit of water to feed these cows and to water these cows and to keep them cool. So we're very useful and efficient with our water use. So we'll reuse a lot of our water over and over again.
And about how many times do you reuse the water? I saw it was kind of flushing a lot of the manure too.
Yeah, about 6 times.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess curiosity question from your family too. I know kids are very stubborn. Are they eager to get into this business, or how does that work out with your family in particular?
I think it's a little easier in the family if any of the kids, because we already own the dairy, we already own a facility, I think it's a little easier for them to get involved as opposed to someone starting from scratch. That's a huge endeavor to take on. It can be done, but it's a little easier to come onto a dairy that your family already owns. But we're fortunate. I'm very fortunate and very lucky to have some generations below me that are eager to get on the farm and be a part of either the dairy side of things or the crop side of things.
Okay. I guess what is the first thing that someone does? Say they're 4 or 5 years old, they're like, Dad, I want to get into this. What exactly do I do? What exactly is the first thing that you put in, like have them doing just to kind of get them acclimated?
Whatever piques their interest, I think, is what would be the best answer, because they may have an interest on driving tractors. You know, typically young boys.
Probably fun, yeah.
Yeah, I want to drive a tractor, but maybe they like to work with the baby calves. That's always a big interest too. I want to go feed the baby calves and maybe deliver. So we'll start them off in maternity. let's deliver your first calf.
Nice.
How
That's
about
fun.
that? Yeah.
Nice. So I guess that kind of brings me to the next question. What exactly are you doing on the farm to make sure that the cows are healthy? Have good high, welfare standards for them. Make sure that the milk is good quality. I know you showed me some things. I know you talked about like a cow Fitbit that they wear on their neck.
Yeah.
So I guess anything particular that you're doing that.
Well, I think it all boiled. Happy cows or healthy cows boil down to how we care for them on a day-to-day basis, or more importantly, on a minute-to-minute basis, and that's obviously well nourished. We have every cow has a nutritionist, and so they get a perfectly formulated diet on the nutrition that we can provide them. That's huge and paramount to us. So if you start with a healthy diet, then that gets them going. Yes, it's more formulated for their age also. And so there's multiple ingredients that we use, primarily hay and corn silage. Then you go into your proteins of your canolas or your amino pluses, and then your minerals and corn, of course. Can't forget corn, straight corn. So that's the primary ingredients, if that's what you mean.
Okay.
But yeah, we also added some monitoring to every single cow and every heifer. And it's exactly like your Apple Watch or your Fitbit, but we monitor those cows on down to the minute on their behavior. So I know how the herd is doing, on how long they're standing, how long they spend up at the bunk eating, how long they spend laying down and ruminating. Also, I know when they come into heat and their ovulation cycles. So it's about managing the cow care from that standpoint. I want them to lay down about a third of the day.
Yep. I always say, like with my own health and fitness coaching clients, what gets measured gets managed. So if you don't have any of these data points, you have no idea what's going on, whether it's step count, body temperature, and it's a lot harder to.
And dairymen are really good at managing what they measure. They measure everything.
Nice. Awesome. And then I know we kind of toured through the dairy farm a little bit, but I didn't realize that there was plenty of acres kind of across the highway over here where you have a lot of crops. So I guess I saw that there was like water going through them. You were obviously watering everything. So what does regenerative agriculture look like kind of like in your farm here to make sure that, you're taking care of the soil and the cows are obviously getting the quality of nutrition they need?
Yeah, I guess regenerative agriculture to me is the full cycle of taking care of the soil health, all the way compared to the rumen health, how we try to pair those two together. And I think you saw some of our algae,
I thought
our blue algae
neat.
that we use one of our programs. But in Arizona, it's about the irrigation and water management. That's probably the most regenerative part of if we can't have water to irrigate those crops, then we're dead. So that's not very regenerative. But if we care and use that water to the right amount for when we need it, then that's going to save that water and conserve that water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I imagine with trying to do some things with algae for general organic practices, you're probably trying to make sure that the cows are very healthy. So I guess how else do you try to manage the cows healthier? I know that there are a few vets on staff. So how do you ensure essential optimal cow health and those diseases don't spread? If there are any, spread to any of the other cows in the herd?
It's through managing every single cow with that Fitbit or the cow collar.
What's it actually called?
It is what we call AI-24.
Okay.
And so it monitors that health of the cow. So literally every action on their jaw is chewing, ruminating, when they come into heat, their activity and how much time they spend. And so when they fall out of the normal parameters that they've set up, it will identify her and flag her to us to say, you know what, let's go check her out and see what's going on. And so that's how we can manage our cow, that health of that animal.
Okay. I guess one other thing that I was wondering, I feel like given Arizona, kind of warm all the time, is there any seasonal variation in, the way that milk is produced, the taste, even beef quality as well?
Yeah, there's a seasonality for amount of production on a per gallon basis or a per hundredweight basis. There's a seasonality. Obviously, when it gets warm or hot here, cows tend to eat a little bit less and try to stay cool. So yeah, and then obviously now in the wintertime, they'll tend to eat a little bit more or produce a little bit more cow because they're just more comfortable in the cooler climates. Cows love about 40 to 50 degrees or colder, and when it gets 100 or 110, they're not as comfortable, just like us.
Yeah, so I guess with that, Say there was a cow in Wisconsin, for example, would that kind of be flipped, given that it's probably 40 to 50 degrees, maybe late winter versus the winter where it's like super cold?
Yeah, they still are in pretty good health in Wisconsin because they'll do the opposite. They'll take them into their basement stalls and keep them a little bit warmer when it's super cold out, because we don't want them to get, frostbite anywhere.
Okay. Yeah, so I imagine also, obviously, you feed them a certain diet, they get healthy, they get older. I know we mentioned it about 2 is kind of when they start breeding, eventually to produce milk. What is the timeline from when you milk the cow to it being on our shelf, or in my glass at home, my bowl of cereal?
That's a very good question. Usually 48 hours or less is typically the amount of time from when, like I think today you got to milk your first cow, yay! And so, but from the time you milk that cow and it goes into the chiller here and we deliver it to the processor, wherever that may go, to the time it makes it to the shelf is just under 48 hours.
Okay. And then I guess probably as we're kind of going through that process, like, is there any particular testing that the milk has done, or even here at your facility right after the cow is milked, or when it's all combined together later on? Like,
as we discussed earlier, milk is about the highest regulated food in the world.
Yeah,
and so when milk leaves our farm on the milk tanker, it goes to get tested, and it cannot be offloaded from that tanker until all the test results come back. So if they're all clean, then it goes on through processing. So every single tanker of milk is tested.
Yeah, and I imagine that's probably, like you mentioned, very highly regulated and very controlled. Probably takes a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of resources on the system. So I guess with that, any particular innovations that you're excited about or think that will come on in the next maybe 10 years that will make milk healthier, potentially, processes a little bit more efficient?
There's one that I'm somewhat interested in, and that would be the metering of the milk and being able to see the somatic cell count live, the butter fat and the protein on a large scale commercial basis. We can really track the production of that cow and how healthy that milk is right from the cow as far as the somatic cell count and the butter fat and the protein. So it's
pretty neat. Love technology, especially with
yeah.
AI and all the things coming up.
I would say one other one is our IVF technologies and trying to breed that perfect cow, that quiet cow that nobody hears of because she's just out there doing her job and stays in her work clothes and gets pregnant every year and milks and just is quiet.
Yeah. I guess given that you were talking a little bit about nutrition and the quality of the cows and the milk that they produce, is there anything in particular on dairy nutrition labels that you think anyone should know about? I know we talked about earlier, I think that if there's a 04 on the label, that's a sign that the milk is from Arizona. Different states have different numbers. Is there anything else in particular that you think is important for a consumer to know about?
I love the full fat milk. I'm a huge whole milk fan guy. And of course the protein. I love when people look at the protein on their milk. I just think it's a perfectly balanced food right from the get-go.
Yeah, protein, carbs, electrolytes, hydrates you because of the water content too, so definitely can't beat that.
Yeah, and those good fats. I think those good fats are good for your brain, right? Brain health.
Yep, good for everything. Good hormone production, everything. Great, Justin. So I have a few other dairy myths that I wanted to talk about. A lot of ones that I'm sure you've read about on social media that are probably a lot of them not true. The first one is just the overall, I don't know if this is necessarily a myth, but the difference between grass-fed, grain-fed, and all those other ones. Like, is there any particular cow diet that you think is best, or leads to a better quality meat or milk?
No, I don't think so. Nothing comes to mind. I always like to think all of our cows are grass-fed because they have Uber Eats. I don't know if people nowadays, the young folks, they like to order their food in. Well, all of our cows have had Uber Eats for a long time. We deliver the grass to them, we deliver the corn to them, we deliver the protein to them, right to their bunk so they can eat. They don't have to go anywhere. What a life.
Yeah.
I love that.
They get to sleep, they get to relax, get to play, run around. I saw that there was a big mound in the back. Like
plenty of fresh water, right?
Great. And I guess going back to the algae that we mentioned earlier, I know that it has to do with generally, organic farming. Any difference between organic versus just conventional, dairy that you see in the stores?
Organic milk?
Yes.
There's a lot more regulations on organic milk. So when it comes to organic milk or regular milk, there's no difference. You can test the milk. side by side, and there's virtually zero difference in the quality of the milk or the taste and the nutrient based of both of them. They're the same.
Yeah, fascinating. I guess
There is a difference in price, though.
Very true, very true. We want to be conscious of the budget here. I guess one other major question that I have, if I drink milk, will I consume hormones that will make me big and strong or be a detriment to my health? I know that's a big question out there.
Well, number one, it will not be a detriment to your health, and there's hormones in all milk, natural hormones that cows naturally produce, but it's not a detriment to your health by no means. Do we use synthetic hormones? Absolutely not. That is a tool that we used to use 20 years ago, and that is gone for the most part.
Yep, exactly. And one other thing that's worth mentioning, a lot of hormones are proteins. They go in your gut, they're broken down like any other protein that you would eat would be, not have an effect on your body too. So I think that's another thing that's worth mentioning, more on the science side of things too. One other aspect that I think is very common that a lot of critics talk about on social media is antibiotics. Are there antibiotics in milk that can affect your gut bacteria, again, lead to detrimental health outcomes?
There is not antibiotics in milk. And like I mentioned earlier, there's every bit of milk that before it goes out into public has been tested, so it's antibiotic free. Do we use antibiotics on farm? Absolutely, just like you would with your child if they were to get sick. You want to try to help prevent that illness as fast as possible. And at times we'll use some antibiotics on our cows, but there's a withhold period, and we isolate that cow into her own little private hospital and her own private room so that we can care for her and observe her on a minute by minute basis to make sure she's getting back to health. And before we put her back into the string, we keep her isolated from the rest of the herd so we don't get antibiotics in the milk.
Yeah, I remember driving around the farm and we saw there was just one pen with just like a few cows out of thousands that were, they were kind of a little sad looking. I kind of felt bad, but it seems like it's just a drop in the bucket of a lot of them, and it's great that you're, kind of segregating from the group, making sure they're healthy.
Yeah.
And obviously with a lot of the tracking too, generally just tends to make things a lot better.
Yep.
Sweet. So we talked about some more serious things. I want to go a little bit more into the fun side. I know you mentioned whole milk is one of your favorites. I guess any other ways that you think consuming milk or dairy products is your favorite or something worth mentioning?
I love cottage cheese. I love regular cheese, of course, too. Kefir, how do you say that?
I say it kefir.
Okay.
I have no
kefir.
idea.
Yeah, I like kefir and the positive gut health that would add.
Yeah, fermented foods.
Yeah, the fermented stuff. So I'm a big fan of that, and obviously just whole milk. That's the best.
I guess of the dairy that you're producing here, does most of it go, like a vast majority go towards just general milk that you find on the shelves, or is a lot of it produced into yogurt, ice cream, other things as well? Like what's do you have like a percentage split?
Yeah, I would say it's about, for our particular farm, goes mostly into fluid milk production, class 1. And then the rest of it goes into cream and could be segregated off to other products after that.
I guess any other like lesser known dairy products that you think are worth mentioning? I know we talked about kefir or kefir is one that I feel like a lot of people don't really know about. Anything else that you think is particularly relevant here?
Well, all your cheeses. I love cheese.
Nice. What's your favorite?
Probably...
I'm a Parmesan guy.
Yeah, Parmesan's really good too. No, I don't have a particular favorite, but I just like all of them. Make more cheese, please. I'll have it.
Any recommendations on storing dairy products? Like I know a lot of it just obviously has to be refrigerated. I know we walked through the farm a little bit. You could feel different pipes, they're temperature controlled. Any way that a typical consumer can, be conscious of these things at home?
I would say keep it cold. Keep it below 38 degrees or around that temperature. That way, if there is any thing in the milk, it's not growing, right? It's not being incubated.
Fair enough. Justin, thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much for showing around the farm today. I learned a whole lot, got to milk a cow, crossed a bunch of things off of my bucket list, so
yes.
I appreciate you having me.
Of course, thanks for coming. We
so
welcome you back anytime you want.
Great, I will be back.
Okay, good.
Buy milk.
Yes.